Hey everybody, welcome back to Magic Orthodoxy. My name's David, and this is a Magic Review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. Today, we're gonna do something a little different. Today, we're gonna review the Turner effect from Peter Turner and Pigcake. Why is it called the Turner effect? Well, because it's a play on the Burglass effect, which, if you don't know, is any card at any number, right? Being able to name any card, being able to put that card at any number. Peter Turner is gonna walk you through his specific, very personal card magic techniques. That's right, because Peter's not normally known for his card magic, but if you ever see him at conventions, he can sit down with a deck of cards and blow card guys away. So what Pigcake wanted to do was get him in a room and really have him talk about his stop forces, his psychological forces, his peaks, how he does all that. It's totally within the wheelhouse of anyone who's intermediate at Magic, but instead of just doing the list and the line after line and the questions of the normal Magic Orthodoxy review, I thought I'd sit down with Pigcake and we'd hash these questions out together. All right, let's go. All right, so we are gonna sit down with Pigcake and we're gonna talk about the Turner effect. It's affect, right? It's not effect.
Affect, yeah, I remember
Affect.
that was
Yes.
point that we're like, oh,
And-
we should call it the effect.
And normally in my reviews, like I'd show you the product. This is a download, so I can't really show you a product. Or I'll go through like just all the effects that are included, and we'll talk about like the table of contents and whether there's something that can be inspected or something held, or is it going to break on you? None of that applies here. So I thought, you know what? Let's just sit down with Pigcake and talk about what this project is, and we'll just spend a couple minutes. And I know we were going to probably talk a lot earlier, and then you got really busy with your Kickstarter, you and Peter, and that went fantastic. And so I think the time that you spent on that and the work that you guys did with that, I hope you're proud, and I can't wait to see that.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
That was
But,
it.
what I was going to tell you, that's kind of funny, just as a brief aside, because I remember, obviously, I binged all of your videos just when I found your channel initially, years and years ago. And my favorite thing that you did was, and what stood out was that you would measure with calipers the size of like the thinness of cards, and I'm like, there's no way this guy is measuring and so detailed, and it was great. I remember I binged like a good portion of your videos up until even because I never buy Magic stuff, and just seeing that, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the best.
I stole that from guys that reviewed Rubik's Cubes.
Oh, really? They do that? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
so I was watch them, and because they always have a format, they're like, this is how fast it turns, this is how fast it corner cuts. They always had like, and they would time it, and then they get the calipers out and they would show like, okay, so it's this big, like, so to give people the idea. So I started caliper measuring like one card, and I'm like, this is never gonna work. Like every card's the same length. And someone said, no, you gotta do more than 10, like, or you gotta do more than one, otherwise it's not gonna register. And I was like, oh, okay.
So good though. It was great. I loved it.
It's my shtick. So
Yeah.
Turner effect is you and Pete Turner, and you're there. I guess what you're in his attic. It always looks like this is an attic or something, like it's some secret Turner room.
It is. It's so funny because you see his house, and he lives like on a farm, and he has this garage. So that's the top of his garage that he's contorted into a studio. And it looks really good. It's actually quite interesting how nice it looks in there. But during the summer, it's an oven. It's unbearable. And you're there just in the winter, it's a freezer, and in the summer, it's a oven. But we have to have fans, and it looks good. But being in there, I'd rather be so many different places. I'd rather be audited essentially than be longer than an hour there. And you know how long he talks. So he talks and talks.
Yep.
But we started there.
And that's good, because this project is not really that long. I mean, people that might either know Peter's work before and just know how he can talk for a long time, like you guys have done a really good job of breaking each one of these segments up. It's only 4 videos. I think the whole thing is 2 hours 10. It's not unbearable, and it's easily broken up a bowl. Like each video, no video is longer than an hour.
Yeah.
So that's good. But I guess we'll talk about like how this came about because I assume you saw him do card tricks every
Mhm.
now and then that weren't necessarily mentalism. And you're a card guy, I'm a card guy, Pete's mentalism, and he's mostly released mentalism. I don't know that he's ever released a card project before. So what
No.
did you do? Just go to him and say like, "Hey, I don't think your techniques have ever been recorded on video. We should do this. We should show people how you do cards."
Yeah, well, this is years coming, and for many, many years, I've seen Peter in conventions and Peter perform. And granted, my name's on this, but it's his project. I produced it, came up with the idea, but it's his project, his baby. And seeing him work in conventions for many years, just riffing with a pack of cards, it's always taken me back because he's always doing these any cards or any numbers, clean methods, like, hands off. They hold the cards, and he's always doing that. And he's always finding mentally selected cards. And I told him we should do a project just based on that, just based on that sort of performance. I wanted to call it the riff, just because it's always him riffing and him
Yeah.
getting handed packs of cards and performing different things. And funny enough that you mentioned the editing and the time, because this was like 5 hours that we condensed to 2 hours and 10 minutes. So there was just so much more. But it was stuff that wasn't, it was great, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted. What I wanted was a condensed, good, digestible format where it's just these techniques, how you could perform them, and then that's it. It wasn't, there's no fluff. These are things that work. These are things that have worked in conditions that shouldn't be performed in loud environments, and they're great because they're pretty easy. They're relatively easy. It's not difficult sleight of hand. They're good forces that we show you there. The techniques when it comes to the mind reading stuff is also, as we were talking earlier, blew my mind when I was sitting down with him because they're very workable and just things that I would have never thought of, and just easy ways to figure out cards that people are thinking of without ever having to touch one. So
Right.
that's why I wanted to start, and just seeing him perform, I hankered him down and I said, let's do this, let's record this. And, luckily we had time during the production of the kit and filming the rest of the stuff to just,
Did he think it was a good idea, or did he like, oh, nobody's gonna want to see this?
well, we've had a list of projects that we've wanted to do for a while. And obviously time, is a big factor. And there's some projects that never came to fruition, but there's a couple like ones in the can that we want to do, like a everyday carry project, there's little things like that. And this was always on high on the list of things.
Okay.
And he's obviously in it. He wanted to do it. It's not like I had to convince him via Miami methods to have him shoot this. But he was very open from the very beginning. And hopefully this is one of many little things that we do that are sort of this style, that are very easy to consume and yet very productive. I always told him, we're undervaluing this because the stuff that he was saying was absolute gold.
Yeah. And I mean, I like that because the fourth video is actually called The Riff.
Mhm.
And that kind of really does put a title on what this whole thing is because he's not just doing a trick. I don't think he sits down and thinks, oh, I'm going to do this trick.
Mhm.
He lets the moment and the deck tell him what to do. And then
Yeah.
he just creates a magic trick out of that moment.
Yeah, it's
Like,
very reminiscent of the trick that can't be explained, right? It's that sort of aesthetic where he's handed a deck and shuffled deck that he hasn't seen any of the cards, and essentially, it's advantage. You're getting advantages at every point. He shows you how to get little peeks and little methods of ascertaining information from the deck that they supposedly haven't, given to you. You haven't done anything weird, and it's that essentially for constructions of the actual individual effects that he goes into. But it's very dependent. It's a tree, essentially. The sort of branches are where you go with what you're given. And sometimes you get really good, lucky. You get lucky with the deck you're handed. Sometimes you don't, and he goes over what happens, in certain conditions, how to make sure that you have fail safes and forces that are 100%. And he borders on, some of the things that are, I would say, could be risk risky, but
Yeah.
there's always a way to reel it back and make sure you get something at the end. But those risks always have some parachute that allow you to fall back. But I enjoyed that last video more than anything, just because it ties everything together. Because the structure, we wanted to have it so that you learn certain techniques, and at the end, you're shown how you could put these all together. And,
Yeah.
trying to wrangle him in for that is also very difficult because he likes to add in things and touch on different subjects. So to try to get him, okay, psychological forces. This is what I need you to focus on. And him for not to go on other things. But that's the problem, because the other things are great, but they're not what I was sort of looking for when it came to this project.
Well, the last video is him kind of doing the whole project to you in like one shot. Like that he's riffing. Would if somebody bought this, do you think that they could actually watch that first just to kind of see what what they're gonna learn?
Yeah. I guess it's modular in that sense, where you could
Yeah.
figure out, oh, this one's that, and each section has different techniques. And even if you're not necessarily going to perform any sort of routine as a whole with this, you're still getting techniques that are going to be able to be applied to other things, like different peaks and different ways of getting shuffled decks, and being able to either sort them in a way where it's going to get you to, a conclusion, maybe with like an any card, any number, or finding a mentally selected card, or having somebody find another person's card, different things
Yeah.
along that sort of, not, I don't want to call it magic, mental magic, but it is, using traditional card moves and combining it with these really like psychological methods, because they're not, if you tell somebody, oh, I'm looking at you and determining your sort of your posture and your language, your body language, to determine what card you're thinking of. That's actually true for some of the techniques in this, because he is using your body language to determine it. So it's not, that classic Darren bit of, oh, you're lying. Like, oh, no, it's actually using like these sort of, I don't want to call it NLP, but bordering on that style to figure
Yeah.
out cards. And still having, again, that trampoline, that parachute to fall back on, that puts you back into position.
And people always talk about his Burglass effect, his any card at any number. And, he's been asked a million times, like, oh, when are you going to release it? And people have seen it, and other people have said, I've never seen it. But do you feel like this kit or this download is like definitely leaning into that? Like you would be picking up the tools that he's using to do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's called the burger. It's called the Turner effects. You can see where my mind is at, right? A
Yeah.
burger.
Yeah.
But it's called the Turner effects for that reason, right? Because he's always sort of alluding and sort of giving little, I don't want to call them, what's the word, where you're not alluding, you're referencing, Burglas a lot. And in this case, this would be sort of the closest thing that he's put out to date, where he's going into the techniques that would be the Turner effect, which is his sort of take on the any card, any number. And I know he's done certain variations of it that might involve gimmicks. He's done, I remember one that he did, I forgot for who that he produced it with, but, certain things here that he's actually done. These aren't things that are just, oh, let's come up with something and sell it. No, these are things that he's actually performed, and routines that he does when he's handed a pack of cards. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Pretend like you're doing a project where if I hand you a deck of cards, what is it that you're going to get into? What are you going to do?
Right.
And this is the stuff that he would do. And this is the stuff that I've seen him do in conventions time after time, and even to me, annoyingly, where, you assume that he gets lucky. And, oh, yeah, you just got lucky that one time. But then you see him do it in Blackpool. You see him do it in Magic Live. You see him do it in a bar in, Yorkshire for some dude that's drunk. And it's still as effective as when he's doing
Yeah.
it in the controlled conditions. And you remember that first Penguin lecture that he did, where he had a very sort of, not a risky, but a very overt method of doing his any card, any number, using traditional methods where essentially it's a one-way pack. And, this is any deck, any time, any condition. You're handed a deck, or, you have your own deck, but you want it to be shuffled, and you want to get into sort of mind reading effects. This would be a really good place to do it, especially if you want to learn individual techniques on how to take advantage of a shuffled deck and make sure that you still get access to the information that you need.
And you guys say multiple times in the video, like, these aren't marked cards.
Mhm.
This can be done with a borrowed deck. You're not doing any sort of like deck stacking. There's nothing to memorize. And 80% of the time, the spectator is holding the cards themselves, shuffling the cards themselves, dealing the cards themselves. Peter's making it look very hands-off-ish, like that's your deck, you shuffled it, and just think of a card, and I'm going to tell you where the card is in the deck.
Yeah, yeah, that's the vibe of this. And granted, you do get advantages with a marked deck. That's not to say that
Sure.
if you do have a marked deck, you could definitely take advantage of these, especially when it comes to certain peaks and certain ways of getting information from the pack. It's very useful that we do mention, I believe, in the download. But the main thing was, here's a deck. You don't know the condition of the deck. It's been shuffled. Sometimes this is a challenge, because oftentimes someone sees them do something and they go, all right, but do it with my deck. Or here, let me shuffle. And this kind of goes into that aesthetic where you could now, take a deck and use these techniques to do a very, very powerful effect. But again, it's dancing, it's jazz. So that's the point of this, that you don't really know where it's going, but you do know that there is a direction, and it's just dependent on the condition that they give you in. But it's a very fun approach, because that really, at least for me, it keeps me on my toes. It lets you know, especially with things like the trick that can't be explained. You're always sort of playing with that and dancing, and it's just a very fun routine to perform. And this is sort of capitalizing on that same similar effect.
Yeah. And so in the first video, it's only 30 minutes. He's basically telling you this is what's happening. These are all the different things we're using, and he's just giving you all the basics. And I think he says it a lot through the whole project is these are tools, not tricks. Like, I'm just giving you the toolbox, and I can't tell you how it's going to go for you. Like, when you sit down with that person, it's going to go a whole new way, and you're just going to ride that wave and get all the way to the end.
But the interesting part too about that is because I believe that first part also goes over a lot of peaks, right, and different ways to get glimpses at cards.
That was the peak one, yeah.
And what's great about that is, even participants that might be difficult, he goes over ways to have them hand you the cards where it gives you an advantage, where you could, maybe peek at something, or ways to sort of gesture and show them and sort of train participants in order to do as you want, even if they might be thinking they're, working against you or trying to screw you up. Sort of ways to dance around that and come to a conclusion where you could ultimately do what you need to do, which is peek at a card, or peek at several cards, or peek at cards at positions that you might need. So that's a very interesting section for that reason. And it's great because, again, these are techniques that involve them holding the cards, and they get that memory of them being the ones that deal. You're not having to do second deals, or you're not having to do overt actions. Again, not to say that sleight of hand won't help in these conditions, but he goes over methods that are psychological in nature, and also taking advantage of sort of physicality almost, where they hand you cards in a way, and it's so good. Again, I've mentioned to you before, I want to fight Peter Turner at every opportunity that I have, just because of the projects that we've gone through and the arguments that we've had producing the Grail and this kit and other little projects that we've worked on. But ultimately, I hate it, but the man's a mad genius. He's a mad genius, and there's a reason why he's working on television shows in the back end. There's a reason why, if you watch, people on TV, and I was watching a, show on television, and I was thinking as to how many things he's had a touch on, UK-based television show. I don't want to say much more, but and seeing, I'm like, okay, that's a Peter effect. That's a Peter effect. That's a Peter effect. That's a Peter effect. And by the end of the thing, you realize like 80% of this is Peter's doing. The only thing that's different is the actor or the person performing. So it's funny in that, but this is a small portion of his mad brain when it comes to that particular scenario of being handed a deck. Which, if you're on the forums long enough, you know that one of the things that you get asked the most is, what do you do? What do you do in this condition? What do you do that's impromptu? What do you do when somebody hands you a pack? And this is the answer to that.
Yeah, really, that first section is his peaks, and then the second video is the stop forces. And the third video is the psychological forces. It's so weird to think of there being stop forces and psychological forces on a deck that you've never held.
Yeah. That's the other part. That's great. Again, a testament to his brilliance when it comes to coming up with methods and workable techniques. Like the stop forces, you would assume that they're psychological in nature, but he shows some techniques there that are mechanical, that work every time,
Right.
that I think are beautiful. Sort of variations of the crosscut that work, with dealing, that are again brilliant methods and really sort of cut the participants' sort of memory, that take advantage of, oh, I didn't touch the cards. Technically, you never did, but there's certain things that you're taking advantage of. But that section on stop forces is very, very interesting too, because and I found myself oftentimes trying to mess him up. I'm like, no, let me
I
just
know.
let me get him. Let me just get him on camera because
You
I'm
can
editing.
tell when you're watching it.
Dude, I'm editing it, so I'm like, I want to make
I,
this guy look like an idiot. So, and then I'm there purposely trying to deal more cards or deal less cards, and then it goes, all right, turn it over, and it's the card that I'm thinking of, or the card that we were that I came to, or whatnot, and it's just But then the psychological portion goes into how to do what I like to call real mind reading, where you're essentially reading the participant, taking advantage of certain behavioral techniques in order to get a card that they're thinking of without any compromise. Like, oh, you're thinking of this card, let's go through a little process. I don't want to mention overtly what the process is because that's
yeah.
download. But it's a very easy thing to perform and logical if you're trying to genuinely read somebody's mind. And you pick up on the cards, or you pick up close, or you manage to get it to a way where they deal to a card. And he does go into detail for things like ACAN on there. That's kind of the backbone of this, is getting to a position where you could do an any card, any number, or you could do something similar to maybe a stop trick, a classic stop trick. But they're all under that premise, and it's very comprehensive, at least that psychological portion going into those techniques, which could be hard to get on camera because they're techniques that are based on looking at a participant and genuinely getting what the card is based on actions that they perform, and still getting it 100% or getting it 99% because they're mechanical methods,
Yeah.
right? So they're methods that
Yeah.
they do have a foundation in, what would be propolis style stuff of having them think things, but they do have a working basis behind them. They have a method behind them that work.
Right. And I think people watching that might be what their question is. Like, he's released some stuff where it's impossible. Like, I will never do it. I'll never do that trick. He's taking risks and chances that I would never take. And half the time I'm watching him, I think that was lucky. You lucked out. Like that was you. Like, and he'll take that risk and he'll succeed. But that's not really the case with this project. I think
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff on here is doable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Very much. Yeah.
And not even really slight monkey heavy either. Like there's not really difficult things here.
You're not doing
They're
spread
just
calls. You're not doing,
right.
yeah. And funnily enough, that you mentioned the stuff on risk. After knowing him as long as I have and working with him in these projects, that guy doesn't take barely any risks. That's the interesting part about it. There's always a backbone. There's always something to fall back on, which is interesting because he gets that reputation with that propolis stuff that, he's taking chances. But, and obviously he's released a book called Dare to Be Bold. But the boldness, I don't think, comes from risking. The boldness comes from the directness, if that's a word, let me coin it, of the effect. And it's so interesting because in performance and watching him, barely does he take risks. Sometimes, he'll take a chance on a cold reading line and, might not necessarily go right, but there's always something to fall back on. And that's something that I've learned about him that's very interesting. And when you sort of know that and you watch him, you kind of see him differently, that he always has that. But that back foundation is invisible. And I guess that's where he gets the reputation of, oh, okay, this is risky stuff. I'm sure you're like alluding to something like Isabella Starr that's just very verbose, and you have to sort of memorize a lot of things. But I've been working on that for a while now, and seeing his touches and takes on it. It's funny after watching him perform that probably like 800 times that you realize, oh, this is really not that bad. It's pretty simple and straightforward, and it's not risky at all. You're pretty restricting them to one of like 3 names, and then you're also restricting them based on the star sign to figure out what it is. And it's not really that bad when you look at it. And that's the one that I always thought was, yeah, okay, you're risking this, but there's always a method. There's always a foundation, and that's what I've learned about him. There's always a foundation, and with this, you don't have to worry about that because there always is a foundation. There's always a
Right.
fallback. There's always a way to come to a successful conclusion, and
Yeah.
it's a great combination of things. I thought that each section could have been something on its own. Had
Yeah, I
we
think so
padded,
too.
had
I
I
agree.
added in all the bits, because again, I did have to cut a lot of stuff that didn't fall to what this project was, and I didn't want people to think other things and combine things. I just wanted to have a pure project. Here's a deck. What can you do with it? And that's what I think we produced.
Yeah. Because I think with most card tricks, we're starting from some sort of premise. So I've already stacked the deck in effect. Like I have a trick deck, or I do have a stack deck, or I
Hmm.
have a force card and it's 12 cards down, and I'm ready to do my thing, or I've already done something advanced. Pete's starting with the deck's in your hands, but then Pete's got the tool chest, and he's like, if they do this, I'm gonna do this. If they do that, I'm gonna do this. And I remember he had me on the phone once, and he was trying to do a trick with me over the phone, and he asked me to name an animal, and I ruined it because I took too long to answer.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't come up with the animal right away. So I said some other random animal, and then he told me later, like, oh, normally people pick an animal that has the first letter that starts with their name. Like my name's David, so maybe I was gonna pick like dog or
Yeah.
something. So he's expecting that, but I picked something else. But you could just hear him pivot so fast,
Hmm.
and that's what he does. He pivots. I taught a like a card force the other day that relied on the spectator stopping the stop force within the first 10 cards. And someone said, well, what if they go past 10 cards? Pivot. Like you just can't throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, well, I guess it's done. Like
Yeah.
I can't do this trick anymore. Like you grab the cards out of my
What?
hands, so I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But these are but grounded in good foundation. So whereas
yeah,
you're pivoting, it's not like, oh, this is Peter stuff that only Peter could do. It's
no,
very easy to manage, very easy to digest, and very easy to also perform and to sort of learn different things that could lead you to understand, okay, at this point I need to pivot into that. At this point I need to go into that. So that is something that he went into a good detail, and I made sure to keep a lot of that because
yeah,
that's what this is. It's that dance that you're performing with them. Because, again, as you mentioned, you're not necessarily knowing where you're heading with this style of magic. It's you have a condition. What can I do with this condition? The trick that can't be explained. Okay, you shuffle the deck. I notice the seven is, in a position where I could force it, or the five is in a position where I could force it. And that happens to be the bottom card, the mate. So now where can I go with this? But this is not necessarily that because they're hiding the deck from you. They're shuffling. They're holding it in their hands. So you're taking advantage of certain, again, physical things that they do and ways that you could peek at information while they think that you can't peek at anything at all. So it's very, very interesting in that aspect. And what's good, again, even if you don't decide to do this when you're riffing or trying to jazz or try to perform anything, these are techniques that you could use to get cards and learn cards that are on top of the pack, or learn cards that might be on the bottom, or a position of advantage in the middle, or
yeah,
maybe you incorporate one of these psychological techniques in order to refine a force that you're working on. So even if you're not necessarily interested in jazz magic, because you might not be in a condition where somebody goes, here's a pack of cards, show me what you could do. You could still incorporate these techniques into other things. And I think it works
yeah.
very, very well. I had a number of ideas after this that were immediately solved by the stuff that he was talking about. I was saying earlier with the high-low stuff. I don't want to go into too much detail because then that's a method. But, that sort of stuff really solved a lot of problems that I've been hankering on for many, many years.
Yeah. And affordable. Like the whole project's $25,
I know, I hate it. I was telling him,
which
like,
is
dude,
cheaper
when,
than a trick deck, and
yeah,
you get 2 hours of material for $25.
I know,
4 videos.
yeah.
Each one's broken down. You want to learn peaks, you want to learn psychological forces, you want to learn stop forces, you want to learn Peter's like, you know, card at any number or
Mhm.
his trick that can't be explained. Like these are all the tools, and you're
Mhm.
going to learn how to perform. And plus, like you said, there's methods in here and stuff in here that you'll use for other things.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. It's
it's
a toolbox.
no risk. $25 is
Mhm.
and it's instant gratification because this download you'll get it immediately.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the other. I mean, obviously, I always want to, and I've said for many years I'm the worst when it comes to any sort of business-minded sense. Like even the Pigcake Magic Academy, like the amount of times people tell me, yeah, this is undervalued. You have 1,700 videos, you're charging $5 for this. I'm like, okay, all right, dude, thank you. But for this, same thing. I'm an idiot. After I saw it and I put it up, I'm like, this is definitely worth way more than this. And that's not just marketing. That's not just me hyping it. It's when he was going over the stuff and when I was, cutting it and finally editing it, when it, came to fruition in the final project, I looked at it as a whole and I'm like, this is good stuff. This is really, really good stuff. And, put it at 25 bucks. I'm like, okay, Peter, I'll put it at that, but this is massively undervalued if you're putting it at that. But ultimately that's what we went for.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're a busy guy out there in Florida.
On the grind. Got a Kickstarter to produce
I
a
know.
successful YouTube
That's
channel
awesome.
to run.
Yep. But hey, thanks for hanging out and thanks for answering these questions.
David, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you again. You're always the best.
No, okay. Hey, talk to you later. Bye.